Today I'm going to show you an action thriller film titled The Island. Be ready for spoilers ahead. The movie kicks off with a band performing at a cozy island cafe known as Island. The cafe's owner, a guy named Manuel Alvarez, takes a liking to Nora, the lead singer of the band. Manuel invites her to his table, showering her with compliments about her beauty and singing voice. He's so impressed that he offers Nora a one-year contract and triples her pay to perform at the cafe every Saturday night. Nora is thrilled and agrees right away. Soon after, Manuel asks a bartender to bring some wine for Nora. However, the bartender accidentally spills wine on her dress. Fortunately, Nora takes it in stride and says she can change clothes, but Alvarez isn't pleased. He's hosting an important guest and doesn't want them to see someone with a stained dress. Shockingly, he ruthlessly kills the bartender right in front of Nora. This terrifies Nora, and she realizes that Manuel is a dangerous individual. As it turns out, Manuel is not just an ordinary cafe owner, he's the leader of a powerful mafia in America. He has been residing on the island for 4 years, using it as a base to expand his illegal activities. The story now shifts to Los Angeles, where we meet two police detectives, Chief Mark and his deputy Phil, who are posing as fake criminals preparing to engage in shady dealings at the airport. Soon, the real criminal along with his accomplice arrive. Mark approaches the main dealer to apprehend him and seize the illegal goods, while Phil prepares to hand over the money. However, things take an unexpected turn when Phil decides to turn the tables and launches an attack. Mark's friend's partner stirs up trouble, sparking a major brawl. Suddenly, Mark's cell phone rings. His mom calls from their hometown, delivering the devastating news of his brother's death. Overwhelmed by this heartbreaking revelation, Mark rushes back to his island hometown. Upon his swift arrival, he attends his brother's funeral, only to learn that his younger sibling was the bartender tragically killed by Manuel not long ago. Mark's mom is devastated by the loss of her youngest child. Whispers circulate that gangsters might be behind the murder, as Mark's brother was returning home from work when the incident occurred. At the funeral, Manuel and two of his henchmen approach Mark to express their sympathies. After the service concludes, Mark and his mother return home. As they reminisce, flipping through old photos of him and his brother, Mark realizes it's been 11 years since he last set foot on the island. His responsibilities as the police chief had kept him away, but now, with a solemn vow, he is determined to avenge his brother's death. Mark heads to the island's police station the next day and goes straight to the police chief, Nate, who turns out to be his childhood friend. They share a deep acquaintance, and Nate offers his condolences for the loss of Mark's younger brother. He assures Mark that they will promptly initiate an investigation into the case. Curious about any leads on the killer's identity, Mark asks Nate for information. Nate explains that they only know the culprits are gangsters, but uncovering which gang is responsible will take time due to the numerous gangs operating on the island. Mark unexpectedly crosses paths with Aquila, a female martial arts trainer who happens to be his ex-girlfriend. Interestingly, she is visibly thrilled to see him after an 11-year absence. During their conversation, Aquila offered her condolences for Mark's brother's passing. Mark inquired about his brother's daily routines and any potential involvement with a gang. Aquila admitted uncertainty regarding the current gangs on the island, as many had emerged after Mark's departure. However, Aquila did mention that his younger brother had collaborated with an American guy named Manuel. Surprisingly, Aquila disclosed that Manuel was more than he seemed. He was in fact a mafia boss. She revealed that his cafes were mere facades, concealing his true operation involving illegal goods and weapons. Learning this shocking revelation, Mark's suspicions about Manuel grew, and he resolved to confront him. Before departing, Mark asked Aquila to look after his mother and ensure her safety. Shortly after, Mark headed to Manuel's cafe, where he confronted him about his brother's death. Manuel responded by spinning a table, claiming that outsiders had killed Mark's brother while returning from a late-night shift. Unconvinced, Mark sternly warned Manuel that he would never forgive him if he was involved in the crime. However, Manuel remained unfazed, chuckled, and dismissed Mark's threats, emphasizing that Mark was simply an ordinary police officer. Nonetheless, Manuel did provide Mark with a lead. He revealed the location of a gangster-frequented cafe, recommending that Mark seek information there regarding his brother's death. Upon leaving, Manuel ordered his right-hand man to assemble gang members from the north to deal with Mark later that night. Meanwhile, Mark paid a visit to his best friend who manages a hot dog stand. When Mark inquired about some weapons he had entrusted to his friend, he learned that he had hidden them in an abandoned building near the beach. Mark's best friend anticipated Mark's quest for vengeance, ready to aid him whenever necessary. Following this, Mark made his way to an abandoned building near the beach and unearthed the hidden weapons his best friend had stashed. Mark arrived at the cafe Manuel had mentioned as evening approached. Swiftly silencing the music, he confronted the gangsters regarding his brother's killer. However, they didn't take kindly to his accusations, and a fight ensued. Remarkably, Mark skillfully managed to best them, leaving the gangsters defeated. Once more, he demanded to know who was responsible for his brother's murder. The gang leader vehemently denied any involvement in harming the locals. Suddenly, A group of gangsters from the north, acting on Manuel's orders, stormed in, opening fire on Mark. Fortunately, he narrowly evaded the bullets, setting off a frantic chase. Amid the pursuit, Mark managed to incapacitate one of his pursuers. Eventually he found a hiding spot, eluding the gangsters until they lost track of him. Manuel's gang contacted him to inform him that they had lost track of Mark. This news infuriated Manuel, leading him to order his gang to eliminate Mark's mother. Shortly thereafter, they reached Mark's house and forcefully entered, firing at what they believed to be Mark's sleeping mother. Upon closer examination, they discovered it was only a pillow, as Aquila had taken precautions to protect Mark's mother. Later on, Mark and Nate were inspecting the crime scene at Mark's residence. Mark couldn't help but wonder that if he hadn't entrusted his mother to Aquila, she might have fallen victim to the attack. Nate informed Mark that he had just received information from his informant regarding his brother's murder. Surprisingly, there was a witness from back then, a female singer named Nora. Nate disclosed that Nora currently resides in a motel near the church. Mark heads to Nora's room the next day, but initially Nora hesitates to open the door, worried that Mark might be one of Manuel's associates. However, Mark displays his police badge to reassure her that he poses no threat. Eventually, Nora opens up, and they begin a conversation. Mark promises Nora that he'll assist her in leaving the island safely, provided she's willing to disclose the true identity of the person responsible for the bartender's murder. Nervously, Nora admits that Alvarez killed Mark's brother over a spilled glass of wine on her dress. She reveals that Manuel has trapped her on the island out of fear that she might report the crime to the FBI. Upon learning this shocking truth, Mark takes swift action and takes Nora to Nate. Mark then requests that he accompany Nora to the pier, ensuring her safe departure from the island. Subsequently, Nate drives Nora to the pier while Mark begins crafting his plans for revenge against Manuel due to his brother's death. Now the narrative shifts to Manuel, who instructs his new mercenaries from the north to hunt down Mark. A few hours later, these mercenaries arrive on the island and head directly to Mark's house in search of him. At his home, Mark, his mother, and Aquila gather. Suddenly, the sound of an approaching car catches their attention. It's the team of mercenaries dispatched by Manuel. Quickly, Mark seizes a weapon and leads his mother and Aquila to the rear of the house. The two mercenaries manage to catch up to Mark, resulting in an exchange of gunfire. Mark subdues one of the mercenaries while the other escapes. Shortly, Nate contacts Mark to check on his whereabouts, and Mark responds that he's currently safeguarding his mother and Aquila at his best friend's house. Meanwhile, Manuel and his right-hand man check in a hotel room on the hunt for Nora. Manuel is enraged upon discovering Nora is missing and doesn't hesitate to take down the hotel guard for failing to protect her. As Mark is about to depart, Aquila insists on joining him. Mark attempts to dissuade her, but her determination prevails, leading them to decide to confront the challenge together. In the evening, Mark and Aquila patiently await the arrival of Nate. They've devised a plan with him to confront Manuel together. Nate arrives in his car, but surprisingly, he stays inside. Mark and Aquila, filled with concern, approach the vehicle only to discover that Nate is severely wounded. Suddenly, gunfire erupts, revealing an attack from Manuel's mercenaries. In the chaos, the mercenaries manage to capture Aquila, while Mark does his utmost to assist the dying Nate, but shortly he succumbs to his injuries. The following day, Mark arrives at the church and addresses the congregation with fervor, uniting them against the oppression imposed by outsiders. He rallies everyone to unite and confront Manuel, the mastermind behind illicit activities. This time, Manuel's actions have not only affected Mark's brother but also the chief of police, Nate, and the kidnapped Aquila. Upon hearing Mark's words, the residents agree to join forces and stand up against Manuel. Mark heads to the police station, temporarily taking over Chief Nate's role. He gathers his fellow officers and stresses their new mission. As Mark focused on gathering information about Manuel, his attention was suddenly captured by Phil, his police partner from Los Angeles. Phil had intentionally sought out Mark, worried about his prolonged absence from Los Angeles. Mark explained that he wouldn't return until he had confronted Manuel, the man responsible for his brother's death and the abduction of his ex-girlfriend. Phil wholeheartedly joined Mark's cause, considering Mark's problem his own. Later, Manuel reached out to Mark, seemingly having pieced together that Mark was involved in Nora's escape. Manuel proposed a meeting at 7 a.m. the next day to exchange Nora for Aquila. Manuel also promised that, following this exchange, he would leave Mark alone on the condition that Mark agreed to put everything behind him. Though Mark reluctantly agreed to Manuel's terms, deep down, he knew that true forgiveness wouldn't come until he had exacted his revenge. As their scheduled 7 a.m. meeting with Manuel approached, Phil agreed to follow Mark's plans. Mark waited at the designated meeting spot to meet Manuel while Phil and his police team attempted to infiltrate Manuel's headquarters to free Aquila. They encountered one of Manuel's mercenaries, but Phil managed to swiftly eliminate the threat. Mark found himself face to face with Manuel and one of his trusted associates. Manuel wasted no time asking about Nora's location. In response, Mark resorted to a little white lie, claiming that Nora would arrive once Aquila showed up. He used this to buy more time while he nervously awaited updates from Phil, who was in the midst of rescuing his ex-girlfriend. Phil had located Aquila but found himself staring down the barrel of a mercenary's gun. With limited options in that tense moment, Phil decided to surrender. Fortunately, they eventually managed to eliminate the mercenaries. Phil quickly relayed to Mark that Aquila was safe with him. Upon hearing this, Mark, in a composed voice, assured Phil that Nora was safe in Los Angeles and had no plans to return to the island. Manuel made a menacing threat to harm Aquila unless Mark complied. Mark revealed that he had dealt with Manuel's henchmen, making them no longer a threat. This revelation angered Manuel, leading him to command his right-hand man to shoot Mark. However, skillfully Mark managed to incapacitate his right-hand man as the hot dog seller, and the local island residents emerged, encircling Manuel with their weapons. Mark called for everyone to lower their arms and proposed a duel with Manuel to resolve their differences definitively. Reluctantly, Manuel agreed to the challenge. The duel commenced, with Mark mirroring the actions Manuel had taken against his younger brother in an earlier scene. Subsequently, Mark and Aquila shared an emotional reunion moment on the beach, signaling that they were officially a couple again and planning to marry in the near future. Shortly after, Phil extended an invitation for Mark to return to Los Angeles, but Mark declined. He expressed his commitment to remain on the island, safeguarding it from outsiders who might want to ruin it. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this.